I'm working on this 1964 wheel horse, model 704 garden tractor. The pull starter don't work right because the aluminum plate behind the flywheel's broken, so there's no place for the bolt to screw in. In the last video, I took the side plate off expecting to replace it, but it has a bushing instead of a bearing, and I don't have one like that. I'm going to try to repair this one. I've never tried welding aluminum like this, and I don't have the missing piece to weld back onto it. I think I'll try making something to add to this, and then figure out how to attach it. The other problem with this plate was this lower hole. It was stripped out at some point. Somebody put a helicoil thread repair in there, but it only has 2 full threads. I'm going to try to use it. Here's an empty Kohler block. I'm going to use it to see how much room I have. The lower fins just barely overlap the top lip of that side plate, so maybe I can attach something to the top of that lip. The fins get bigger as they go up, but my part can angle outward as it comes up to clear those. There's some clearance under the lip for a few screws or nuts if I want to bolt a new piece on. Here's an unbroken side plate. That bolt hole extends out over the flywheel, so my part has to attach to that lip and extend out over the flywheel. I'll put a flywheel on there. This has to be centered on the crankshaft hole, not the back plate. It'll be off to one side like that, so the flywheel comes right up to that lip. When you put the cover on, there's all kind of clearance above the flywheel. I'm going to put one bolt in here to hold this side plate to the block. I have some metal scraps here that might work, but I wonder if that hole is on an angle. I'm going to get a screw and put in there. If I line up this piece with the screw, it looks like the screw is parallel to the lip there. That would be handy. Here's a piece that might fit on that lip. It's a bit too wide, but I can fix that. I have to file off those broken parts there. Maybe this chunk of metal hanging out to put the screw in. It has to be thick enough to have plenty of threads in it. I kind of like that. It has to be tall enough to cover that bolt there. That's plenty tall enough. And there's enough clearance, I'll probably leave it that tall. Okay, I think I have a plan. I have this board clamped to the table, and it sticks out just enough so the bearing plate touches the table down below. I'm going to file this flat. This piece needs to be able to sit flat on there. Don't want it rocking around on a high spot. This piece goes on the end, but it has to overhang enough to cover the bolt hole. I'm going to make that flat piece the same width as the shelf. This has to overhang about that far. And I'm going to cut that at an angle on the back. I got this piece cleaned up on the belt sander. Now the sides are straight and it's the same size as this shelf. This part's deburred, ready to go on. Just want to verify. This has to come out far enough to cover that bolt. And the black line is on the edge. So that should work. Looks like I have room for weld on the inside, but probably going to grind most of the weld off the outside. It goes on this end. I'm going to put a little chamfer on this edge, so when I grind this to almost flush, there will still be some weld down in there. Now I need a way to hold these in position for welding. This chamfer goes to the outside. I'm going to put this copper plate down first so I don't weld the part to the fixture. This vise should keep the vertical part vertical. I'm going to use the top of the vise to keep the parts square to each other. So I want that black line halfway covered with the vise jaws. This flat part can move around easily. I'm going to put some weight on it to help hold it in position. It's all cooled off now. That looks good so far. I'm going to grind most of the weld off the end. That fits nicely. I just have to adjust it side to side. Looking from this angle, it looks like there's enough overhang. I have this good housing. I want to make sure it's straight. I'm using this housing instead of the original because the original has all the bolt holes wallered out, and I want good holes to establish a position. This back plate fits in here pretty well. I can line up this steel part with the aluminum shelf. I'm going to try to clamp this part where I want it to be. Oh, I pushed down on that back plate and it wedged into the housing. Got to get that back to the right place. Okay, now I don't like this hole. It's a little bit distorted, so it wants to pull my part crooked. That should work better. I think I want to put the first screw in the middle, so I'm going to move this clamp. There's some side force on there when I tighten the clamp on the end. I'm going to use these pliers to line up the edges while I tighten the other clamps. That's where I want it. I should be able to remove this clamp on the end and lift the back plate out. Check and see if it fits back in there. That looks good. I think that's where I want it. Now I have two sizes of screws here, a 1024 and an 832, both with nuts. I'm going to start with the smaller one, the number 8 screw. I'll put one in the middle and test fit it to the block and make sure it clears. If it don't, I can adjust my position for the bolts on each end. Now I'm going to put a mark near the middle of the available area. I have to position it so it's not touching the radius in the aluminum here, and not touching the block when the plate's bolted on. It looks like that would be a 1/4 inch from the edge. My marker's too fat to mark a good spot, so I'm going to make a black spot and mark it with a scribe. This is a spring-loaded center punch. I'm going to adjust it so it don't have as much pressure. I don't want to put too much impact on this aluminum casting. I didn't like holding that piece at the bottom while I was working on the top. This is a better setup, clamped to the table with wood blocks underneath. I drill a smaller hole first because it takes less down pressure. And the second drill bit takes it to size. That looks good. There's room for 3 bolts across there like that. This is a test fit on the engine that it's going back on. I can see a little bit of clearance between the nut and the block. And the nut's not up on that radius, so that looks good. Plenty of clearance around that bolt head on the top side. I'm going to add 2 more screws the same way. I saw that part move. Gonna have to watch that. I'm gonna put a clamp on the other end before I finish this hole to size. Wrench don't fit. It fits that one. Must be the wrong size screw. That looks good, except for the bolt in the middle. I'll have to change that out for one that's the right length. I want to mark the position of the new bolt hole, so I'm going to put all the other bolts in to hold it in the right place. I'm gonna make a black spot again so I can mark it with a scribe. Well, that's as far as I'm going this time, and here's what it looks like. I have that bolt changed out so they're all the same now. Next time I'll take that back off to put the threaded hole in it. When it goes back together, I'll put some Loctite on the screw threads. Alright, that's it.